So therefore, we would need to change the system, for instance, in this way, that we would be able, if prosecution says no, that's nothing, we should be able as an organization to take it to the next level, such as the court in this case. Thanks, and hi everybody. Thank you for coming here and supporting this great conference. I have been involved in some thoughts, some thinking that we have been doing as an organization as well, about animal politics, about a multi-species democracy, and I have of course been influenced by the so-called political turn in animal ethics. If you are into theory, you might have heard that. It's the basic idea that we come from animal ethics, which is about the moral status of animals, and it turns into animal politics, which is more about the relationship between us and other animals out there. So this was like 10 years ago, this political turn, and actually, to be honest, it took me a little while to understand it, like what or how this is relevant for me, even though I studied philosophy myself and I find that highly interesting. It took me a little while to understand how we can actually apply this. And as of right now, we as an organization have been thinking about it quite a lot, and we figured that we just need to change our local system. So this is what the political turn is for us about, that we have to change our local system. And in my case, this is Bern. This is where I live and I work. And as you can see, there are a lot of houses, there are a lot of bridges, there are a lot of churches, there are some parliaments as well. And it seems to be like there's a pretty dominant species in Bern, which is of course the human species. And since there are so many humans and so many human activities going on, you might actually come to the conclusion that this is a human society. Upon closer inspection, though, this is where I live, more or less. As you can see, I'm not a designer. And, well, I sometimes say jokingly that I have more animal neighbors than human neighbors, but actually it's not a joke. There are a few trees around my house, and there I see squirrels like every day. They live up there, as well as the pigeons, which is probably not that special, as they live in almost every human cities as well. When it's raining, there are frogs like all over the place. I'm not really close to the river, the apartment I live in, so I don't really know what they're doing, but it's, I guess, up to them. And one time when I was getting home late at night, I was walking in the middle of the street. It was dark. I came across a badger who was actually crossing the road. I was quite scared, as well as he was, I guess. And then he disappeared in the dark and wasn't being seen yet, at least by me anymore. But I thought it was quite interesting to have a badger in the middle of the capital of a country, as well as foxes, which are my favorite, especially the baby foxes that I sometimes see from my window. They happen to like the forest. It's not a forest, they're like a few trees next to my house where I live. So these are just too gorgeous, and of course, I think you are getting my point. We are, of course, not a human society, but a multi-species society. And what that means is that everything we do, everything we decide, all the policies, all the new laws that we create, actually don't only affect us, but also other animals as well. And so this is like the basic argument that I'm trying to make here, since we are a multi-species society, which is a fact, and other animals are affected by our decisions as well. Since we are a multi-species society, we need to become a multi-species democracy. And that means that animals would have a say in politics as well. And speaking of politics, or in general democracy, it might be like a simplification, but to me, democracy is like a bunch of institutions, and if we want to become a multi-species democracy, we just need to change those institutions that are the basis of our democracy. So as a Swiss citizen, this is for me a good start. I stress that I'm a Swiss citizen because it might look similar in your country or it might look totally different. I have no clue since I only know a little bit about the Swiss system. In our democracy, this is where the political magic happens, you could say. For instance, in these three branches, you might remember those from school, or if you are into politics, you actually might be working in some of those branches. So starting with executive, this is where laws are being implemented in general, but also for animals. In Switzerland, we have the system that we have like a couple of different federal offices that are responsible for implementation of the laws. For instance, from the point of view from the animals, importantly, we have this Federal Office for Food Safety and Veterinary Affairs. And one could actually argue, why would we actually need to change the system since we already have this office that is actually about the implementation of animal welfare laws for once, which is already pretty important for the animal well-being, of course. And of course, they also do like veterinary stuff, such as the monitoring of the use of antibiotics that are used in or for farm animals, for instance. So why would we need to change the system? Well, maybe you saw it already in the name of this institution. It's not only about the well-being of animals, it's also about food safety, which means they try to deal at the same time with sausages that are made from well-being of the well-being of cows, or in this case maybe chicken. No, not chicken. Pigs. Thanks. So, I mean, whatever they put into non-vegan sausages, I don't really know that. So, if you're doing like these sausages and try to keep pigs alive or healthy, that of course doesn't go together because, well, from the animal rights perspective, it's just it doesn't really go together. So. There has to be some change in terms of institutional change in this case. And there might be like different options, of course, and you might want to create a new federal office, or as I am trying to present now, this idea, which is interesting in general, I think, but also because Germany, as of this year, if I'm not mistaken, has just implemented such a position, an animal spokesperson, which is basically responsible for like making the animal voices being heard in society, basically. And here are some tasks that this animal spokesperson, which by the way could be one person, or it could be like a group made out of, I don't know, veterinarians and philosophers maybe, or farmers, or biologists, you name it. Like everybody who's like directly or indirectly working with animals. They could be doing some reporting, which is being done already in some countries, at least. In Switzerland, for instance, we rely on these reportings that are being done by the state or by some animal industries as well, heavily, because like we use them all the time. For instance, the number of the animals being killed in slaughterhouses every year, that's something that is hugely important for us. But I think we should go a lot further than that. Numbers are important, but we need to have some kind of stories, I guess, as well. For instance, you might know the GDP. I believe it's the gross domestic product that is here to measure the economy, which it does pretty well. But as we know, our lives are not really that much connected to economy. So there are some other ideas apart from the GDP to measure actually the human happiness, for instance. So there are some human happiness indexes, and I think we should have something in terms of animals as well. So such a animal happiness index, for instance, which could be a number, or it could be like a full report that comes out, I don't know, maybe every 2 or 3 years or something, which will give us an idea on where we are on our way to a multi-species democracy. So next is research, and I'm not talking about animal testing, of course, because that doesn't really benefit the animals, if at all, but rather those who want to profit from their corpses and bodies. But what I have in mind is the quite fascinating research of human-animal studies, which is still a quite new field. It's an interdisciplinary field, which means that different subjects, such as philosophy, biology, law, you name it, architecture, for instance, like basically everywhere where there are some human-animal relations involved, this is a subject of human or a potential subject of human-animal studies as well. So I think personally this is super interesting, but I also think that the general public needs to have more knowledge about that subject, because at least the way I observe it, and I might be wrong about this, but the way I see it is that these research findings, they usually stay, unfortunately, in the bubble of the researchers or of the animal rights movement, which is already something, yes, but I think it would be a lot more helpful if we would actually reach the general public. For instance, this is how I come back to the animal spokesperson. The animal spokesperson could try to break those findings down so that a 5-year-old would understand it and actually give it to newspapers or journalists that could then write or stream whatever about it. Next is networks, and I guess I don't have to tell you how important networking is. Since you are here, you probably are into networking. But if I look at the Swiss movement or at the Swiss animal movements, there are so many differences, such as the animal rights movement as well as the animal welfare movement. And even in the animal welfare movement, there are like dozens and dozens and dozens of different organizations, even in our small country, Switzerland. And I hardly know any of them, so I do see some huge potential to do some networking here, which we tried recently. We just launched a roundtable, which is called the Animal Liberation Gathering in Switzerland, where we try to gather as many different animal-related organizations as possible. We wrote an email to like most of them, but we ended up as like a bunch of animal rights people at the table, which is great, which is a good start, but there are so many different actors in the animal movements in Switzerland, especially the animal welfare movements that aren't really connected to the animal rights part, I think, that's at least my perspective. And I can understand it the way it turned out to some extent, because we are perceived as quite radical in the general public, which is true, which we aren't denying. But it might be helpful to have some neutral position, such as an animal spokesperson, to create those roundtables and actually bring together all the people that are working for or with the animals. And lastly, it's a similar point about lobbying. We do have some lobbying activities going on in Switzerland, which is great. But again, it's being done by NGOs, either in parliament or outside of it. And especially the right-wing people, who are actually those that we need to convince, they aren't really interested in doing politics with NGOs because they are perceived as too radical. So again, an animal spokesperson could be helpful, because this group or person would be perceived as a lot more neutral, and therefore maybe the right-wing politics or politicians would be more open to make politics with them. That would be like the first branch. And these are, again, just a few ideas. As I discovered, there are so many different organizations or institutions only within the executive branch in Switzerland. So there's quite a lot of different options that we have here, or at least the animal spokesperson, that's like one option that we have. And next I come to the judiciary branch, which is where the interpretation of laws are made or is done. So we as an organization, we try to use that branch pretty often because we do investigations. That means that we publish footage from factory farming, from animal transportation, and from slaughterhouses as well. And mostly, if not all the time, we see some unmatched regulation so that animal welfare laws aren't being met. And when we see that, we file a complaint, which in the Swiss system goes to prosecution, which is like a legal institution before the court. And what we see, and not only us, but other animal rights organizations as well, is that prosecution isn't really sensitive in terms of animal welfare, which means that they aren't really interested in those cases and they usually close it. Then we can nothing do. There's like everything is done, so you can go home and try something different. Which is like most of all cases that we filed end up like this, and which is sad, of course, because I think the legal branch of our government is like super important, like an additional option to make animal voices being heard in society. So therefore, we would need to change the system, for instance, in this way that we would be able, if prosecution says no, that's nothing, we should be able as an organization to take it to the next level, such as the court in this case, which is called, I believe, an organizational standing. That means that we as an organization would be allowed to take cases to the next level. We already do have that for some environmental organizations, which works pretty well. So there is some experience with it that we are trying to like gain from. And there's some other idea that we actually have some experience with in Switzerland, at least in one canton, which is our country or state, as you might call it in your country. Well, in our canton of Zurich, there used to be an animal lawyer, which is basically a combination of the animal spokesperson that I was talking before and a organizational standing. So an animal lawyer could file a complaint in the name of animal and actually take it to the next level if needed. Unfortunately, due to some policy changes that were quite broad, this position was abolished as well, even though it worked pretty well and it was pretty popular too. So these are some ideas of the judiciary branch that we are working on as well. And lastly, I would like to come to the legislative branch, which is probably the most important, but also the most difficult, because it would require politicians to step down or to step back and actually give away some of their privileges or power that they have. But still, there are some solutions. Well, at least idea, maybe not a solution because it's so difficult. But here are some ideas that contain a lot of open questions, at least to me. I haven't really figured out like the best idea yet. And the idea is basically to put some animal representatives into parliament, or as it works in Switzerland, in commissions. So we have commissions that prepare all the laws and policies and everything that is being discussed in parliament. And so therefore they are pretty important as well, and we could place those animal representatives both in commissions or in parliament directly, or we could also create a new commission for animal rights, for instance. Then there are more open questions, such as who should be able to actually elect those animal representatives. That could be like the general public, as with politicians, or it could be some specific animal rights or animal welfare organizations, why not? And there is also some ideas with deliberation, something which is like a different approach to politics that I find pretty interesting. I just read a book about it, that it had been done recently in at least Germany, England, and Switzerland. So you might have heard about it, or you actually might have participated. And the way it works is that it's not about, it's like politics outside or without politicians. So people are chosen randomly. Normal people, not politicians, are chosen randomly, and they are put together in a group with experts, again, from different fields, such as biology, veterinarians, philosophers maybe, farmers, and so on. And they may all be deciding who is going to be the animal representatives in Parliament. So these are a few ideas, and again, I would like to stress that it's extremely important to change those institutions. I was talking about some state-related institutions, because as far as I know, these are the ones that are responsible or important in Switzerland. In your countries or where you come from, there might be other institutions, maybe they're not even connected to the state, that are still responsible or relevant for the democracy, and if so, they would need to be changed as well for a human-animal democracy. Before I'm finished, here are some general thoughts about strategy, basically, and we have been doing quite a intensive work about theories of change, and actually we are going to present those ideas in a paper as of next week. Unfortunately, it's going to be in German, but we do have some ideas to translate it into English as well. And well, we have been studying like the animal rights movement a lot recently, and what we found is, and I wouldn't like generalize, but to some extent we found that there is the idea that we do have a lot of tactics, such as doing leafletting, such as investigations, such as vegan cookies, of course, and they all should help us to gain like the big gift at the end, which could be like, which is actually quite some consensus, which could be like the animal rights, the right to live, the right to life, the right to integrity, or the right to liberty. And I guess we all agree on that end, and I'm also happy to have so many theories that actually describe how this world, how this vision, how this future should actually look like. But I think we also need to focus on how to actually get there. And this is what we were trying to do with our process of this theory of change. And what we discovered is that change actually looks more like this. So speaking of rights, for instance, if you take human rights, there were like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was introduced in 1949, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. And you could get the impression that this was something like this. So this is human rights and end of story. But of course, we did have, those who lived back then, they did have some rights, or some of them that were living that back then, they were having some rights, such as workers' rights or political rights. They existed before the Declaration of Human Rights. And after those Declaration of Human Rights, it just kept on going with children's rights first and women's rights, of course. And it kept on going until this day, actually, with LGBTQIA star. And it probably continues, hopefully across the species borders as well. And there's some quite important question regarding this figure that I will come to in a minute after I invite you to our presentation of the theory of change. Unfortunately, this is going to be in German as well. But again, we do have some ideas to translate at least the paper that we wrote, which is about 20 pages long. And it's going to be in about 2 weeks from now. Anyway, you can go on our website or our social media. You will find that information there. So, and the important question it's this, and I think this is something that is not neglected by the animal rights movement, but there's very few ideas on what rights we should actually start with. What rights and what animals. And well, there are some ideas. You might know the Great Ape Project from the 90s, which is exactly an answer to that question. But I think we need a lot more, because rights tend to be different in different countries. So it might work, as it has already, like the GAP or the Great Ape Project has been successful in some countries, but it hasn't in Switzerland, for instance. We tried that as well, we as a movement, and it didn't work. But there are others. There are others that may be helpful. Other rights, I mean. And this is how I come back to the beginning, where this political turn has been happening. And since then, the idea of political rights as a start could actually become handy. So political rights are interesting, I think, because they don't take away anything from anybody, such as they don't take away the meat from the meat eaters, which is a political no-go, at least in Switzerland, and I believe in every other country as well. So they don't ban anything, such as slaughterhouses, but rather it's a empowerment. It makes animal visible in our society, and visibility, I think, is nothing less than a prerequisite of a multi-species democracy, which is a society in which animals are treated and seen as equal members. So these are my thoughts, and as you might have realized, it's like work in progress. There are so many open questions still, which is why I'm really curious about your thoughts, your ideas, but also your criticism. Thank you.